shame or guilt is not a motivator of the Holy Spirit, which means it's a motivator of the enemy. And so being able to recognize immediately, okay, I'm feeling shameful here. I'm choosing not to be led by my feelings, but instead to be led by the truth and what I know needs to be brought to the light, and being vulnerable enough and humble enough to say, hey, I messed up here. Hey, this is an area of weakness here. And then the responsibility that comes with that for the other party to not add shame, to not condemn, all those things you just talked about. There is a level of responsibility on the other side as well. Welcome back to the Greater Marriage Podcast. We are the Millers. You look good today, babe.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're
Blend in
welcome.
with the wall quite well. I think my shirt's the exact same color. Paint match to the wall behind us if you're watching on YouTube.
Looks great. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the power of transparency.
This is a big one.
It is.
Transparency, purity, being open and honest with one another. I think that one of the biggest intimacy killers in a marriage is the lack of transparency.
Right.
Because I think with a lack of transparency, it displays a lack of trust, right? I don't trust you, therefore I'm not going to let you in on this area of my life. I think that this is something that I was very bad at the beginning of our relationship. I think that I brought a lot of insecurity into our relationship, and I brought a lot of secrets in my life. I think that just as a young man, you know what I mean? You find coping mechanisms, and I think that the coping mechanisms that I allowed myself to have when I was single, I thought marriage would just kind of break off of me. And, you know, the way you look at other women, the way you think about other women, the secret places that you have in yourself, ways that you escape, things that you avoid, things that you push down, like all of those habits that I had created as a young man. I think that I thought, man, when I get married, I'm going to be great at talking about my feelings. And when I get married, I'll never look at another woman because I'll have a wife now. And I'll never think those thoughts anymore because I'll have a wife to think about. And you have all these dreams and expectations. And then you get married and it's like, oh, man, the same sin that messed with me before I was married carried into our marriage. And the same insecurities that I had carried on, and the same lack of discipline that I had carried into our marriage. And I was very undisciplined. I was very insecure. I was not a great leader. I was very passive. And that is something that I've continued to have to work on, and get rid of, is just having a passive personality, not wanting to deal with conflict, not wanting to have hard conversations, just wanting to forget about it and move on, and who cares, and not make it a big deal. But I think that in doing that and having secret parts of my life, I think that your secrets will make you sick.
Right.
And I began to find areas of me that were just sick. And that I just wouldn't open up to you about. And I think that's how we got into sore spot conversations, and having better communication was simply because a lack of transparency made me sick, and not being able to be open and honest with one another.
I think it's such a common misconception that getting married fixes all of those things.
Yeah.
I mean, we've heard people talk about that so many times, about thinking that marriage is this fix to the issues that they had before, when in reality, if anything, it's an amplification.
Oh, for sure. Marriage will not fix you. It will only amplify your issue.
Yeah.
For sure. And so any insecurity you have isn't going to be fulfilled by your spouse. Any lack of fulfillment, it's like, we cannot, and we'll talk about this in another podcast, but you cannot rely on your spouse to meet your every need. Like, our needs are met according to his riches and glory, yes. Like in God, not just our financial needs, what it kind of sounds like talking about his riches, but the riches of God are not financial riches, right? It's every aspect of our life, and every feeling that we could feel, and everything that we really need that we didn't even know that we needed. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His ways are higher than our ways. And so I think that we have areas of our life that we try to mend by having a spouse. by having someone, that we see as a best friend that we can do life with, and then we realize that they're human and they come up short, and then it allows us to feel like we come up short. And when you don't share those intimate areas of your life with one another, when you don't share your secrets, when you don't share what you're struggling with, when you don't share what you're dealing with, and how the enemy is attacking you, I think that it just creates another area. It creates a foothold for the enemy to come in. And, we say all the time whenever we teach couples, insecurity breeds infidelity, but confidence breeds covenant. When you are insecure in yourself or in your marriage, it breeds infidelity. Not that you're going to go cheat on each other, though it could happen, but you may just go to seek affirmation elsewhere. And be it from friends, from a job, from a hobby, from your kids, from a mentor, from a church. We believe in the local church. We believe that you need to be planted in a local church. But if you're looking to the church to meet all of your needs are met from God. Not, of course, the church is a resource, and the church should be a place where you find development and discipleship, and a place where you find community, but that is not where you have your needs met. And so I think that in light of being transparent, you need to be transparent with your spouse, and you need to realize that there is no shame. There should not be shame in marriage. You should not cause shame to your spouse. It is created and designed for intimacy in every way, right?
And the word says that everything in the darkness will come to light,
Yeah.
right? And so I would much rather be the one to shed light on an area of darkness in my life with you and be transparent and be vulnerable than it to be brought to light in a different way that probably is going to be even more painful. Even if it is something that's hard for you to hear, I want to be the one that shares that with you, because that is the basis of rebuilding that trust if there is broken trust there, versus if you found out a different way about an area of my life that was in the darkness, it'd be a lot harder to start building that trust.
Yeah, and I think that happened in the beginning of our relationship. There was a lot of trust broken because you began to discover these things. It wasn't things that I was sharing with you. You began to discover them on your own. And as you saw these hidden places and these areas of insecurity and the sin that I struggled with, or whatever that was, whatever I used to, when we'd come into situations like, man, you really didn't have my back there. I didn't feel like you protected me. It's like, yeah, it's because I'm a passive, weak leader. It's because I don't know how to be a husband. I don't know how to lead you well. I don't know how to be out in front. I don't know how to take the hit for you. And I hadn't figured that out yet. I was so afraid of being hurt. I was so afraid of being exposed. I was so afraid of not doing something well that I didn't do anything at all. And I think that as you begin to discover this, it was hurtful. It was, and I think you start to see it as, what's wrong with me, or why won't you do that for me, or am I not worthy of being protected, or am I not, do you not want to protect me? And you begin to see those shortcomings as a reflection of us, or of even yourself, and it begins to cause insecurity in you. And it's like, man, we've got to be able, I think the most meaningful conversations we've ever had are areas where we're exposing things that hurt, and exposing it. It's like, man, this is where the enemy tries to trip me up, and I need you to know. I need you to know so that you can help me, because we are helper for one another, right? And it's like, we are called to help one another and to build one another up and to make one another better. I am a better man of God because of you, but it wasn't easy to get to.
Right.
What we've built has not been easy, but what we've built has been worth it.
But those areas that are, weaknesses to us, if we give them to the Lord in true humility, and we're willing to say, hey, this area needs a whole lot of work. I need a whole lot of help, Lord. I need a whole lot of help, husband, wife. Those areas can become some of our greatest strengths. Yeah.
It's a natural human tendency to want to hide your differences and to want to be ashamed of that. We see that in Genesis 3.
Pride.
Yeah, 100% it's pride. Yeah, we're evil from birth, right? We're born into sin. We're born into this. It's since the fall. Since the fall, we see that shame that came. It says in Genesis 3 that at the moment their eyes were opened, they felt shame in their nakedness. Before that, it said they were naked and unashamed. at the moment their eyes were opened, that light was shed on, or actually that they stepped into darkness, right? And the light began to expose things. They felt shame in their nakedness. That shame was not from God. The nakedness was from God. The open relationship was from God. But because of that shame, they went through extra work to hide it. They went and they sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves, right? And I think it's natural human tendency to want to cover those secret areas and those areas that are different from one another.
Right.
Every time you see a picture of Adam and Eve, they always had the fig leaves on, right? Or Eve's hair covers her, right? But you see like the post fall fig leaf picture. What do the fig leaves look like? Bathing suit every time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? It only covers the areas of them that are different. They only covered up their differences and the private parts of them.
That's so good.
Right? Because that's our human tendency, is to not live pure and open with one another. It's like, oh, you don't think that way, or you're not going to accept that, or we're not the same in that area. Well, this is my thing now. I've got to cover that. This is for me now. Right? And we see that in that picture with Adam and Eve, that as soon as they stepped into darkness and entered into sin, all of a sudden the light became exposing instead of freeing.
Wow.
And it's like that light needs to be freeing in our relationship. It needs to be a freeing moment that we can be naked and unashamed, that we can lay it all out there. And I can trust that you're not going to shame me for those areas. And I think that we should never shame our spouse, but there is shame that comes with it. Just as a husband, I don't want you to know where I'm weak. I don't want you to know where I feel like I can't provide for our family, or I feel like I can't protect you, or I feel like I can't do my duty as a husband, or as a companion, or a leader, or a friend, or a dad, or whatever that is. I think it's so easy for us to fall into the trap of, no, they're going to disown me, they're going to dislike this, they're going to shame me. I think that we have to create a healthy place in our marriage for transparency. And you've got to communicate that, hey, it's like, whatever you bring to me, I'm going to accept it, and we're going to move forward from here. And accepting it doesn't mean that you condone it, right? We cannot condemn and not condone. I cannot condemn you for what you've done, but not condone, like, hey, this is wrong, and what you're dealing with is not good, but we're in this together.
Isn't it so interesting, too, that the very first thing Adam and Eve felt was shame? And what is the very first thing that we feel when there's an area of darkness that needs to be exposed?
Yeah, shame.
Shame. The enemy's tactics haven't changed. He's not, I think we give the enemy too much credit. He's not some genius out there. He's been doing the same thing since the beginning of time. And shame or guilt is not a motivator of the Holy Spirit, which means it's a motivator of the enemy. And so being able to recognize immediately, okay, I'm feeling shameful here. I'm choosing not to be led by my feelings, but instead to be led by the truth and what I know needs to be brought to the light. And being vulnerable enough and humble enough to say, hey, I messed up here. Hey, this is an area of weakness here. And then the responsibility that comes with that for the other party, to not add shame, to not condemn, all those things you just talked about. There is a level of responsibility on the other side as well.
Yeah. It's funny, you talked about exposure, right? Light and dark are opposites. Obviously, we know this. Light exposes things while dark gets exposed, and dark hides things. And we need to shed light on our situation. We talk about how light is freeing. I have a story for this. Okay. You're going to love this.
Oh gosh.
You're going to love this story.
Sometimes I don't know what you're going to share.
When Heather and I first got married, of course, I took my role as husband, protector, provider very seriously.
Yes.
Grew up doing Taekwondo, martial arts, big UFC fan. And so, quit when I was 12, feel like I still got it. Feel like I still do a spinning back kick. I got it. Appreciate that, baby. Watch those UFC fighters, like I could do that for sure. I could choke somebody out real quick. And I remember laying in bed, and of course I sleep on the door side because that's where the killers sleep. That's where the protector sleeps, right? Like I'm sleeping on the door side. I'm gonna protect my wife. I'm gonna make sure she's good. We got a new baby in the house. And so neither of us are sleeping well, but man, we're in it. And I'm like, I'm going to fight for my wife. If anybody comes in that room, I'm going to cover her up and I'm going to fight them. She'll never even know they were there. I'm on intruder alert at all times, right? So I get up. I just got to use the restroom. It's the middle of the night. It's 3 a.m. Like I said, we're not sleeping well. And not only was I on the door side, I was also on the bathroom side. Maybe part of the convenience of sleeping on my side. Maybe
the
also,
true intentions come out.
not only did I want to protect the house, I also wanted to be on the bathroom side and just make it easy for myself. Didn't have to wake you up. So you're one that if you wake up, you're up. Mm-hmm. Like if I wake up at 3 a.m. because I had to go to the bathroom, you're up for the rest of the night. Yes. And so, got to avoid that. But in this moment, I'm like, I gotta go to the bathroom. So I get up, roll out, go use the restroom in the middle of the night, well hydrated. And I'm walking back to bed, of course, thinking through all this. My baby's in there, my wife's in there. Got to protect my home. This is who I am now. You're a man now. You're a husband now. And I walk through the door. Of course, I didn't shut the bathroom door. I walk through the open bathroom door to go back into our bedroom, and I run into a human being. And the first thing on my mind is protect this house, right? So I go, what do I know? I know Taekwondo. So what do I do? 2-hand shove, get my five. I'm freaking out. I'm ready to roll. I'm ready to fight right now. And then I hear my wife as she flings back onto the bed. And I realize I have just physically assaulted the woman that I was trying to protect. And here's my point in this.
No. First, you left out a key detail there.
Oh, no.
Did you forget? It wasn't just your wife. It was your pregnant with second child wife.
You were pregnant. Oh, man. Brutal. Hey, just so you know, second baby's doing great. Izzy's doing great. It's real. Izzy James, he's killing it. He's 9 years old. Oh, man. Yeah. So my pregnant wife, who also had to get up and go to the restroom in the middle of the night because you're pregnant, right? You got a babysitter on your bladder. So 2-hand shove my wife. In my mind, that was someone coming to destroy our home, right? That was someone coming to attack my family. And here's my point. The darkness will show you things that aren't there. Mm-hmm. When you keep things hidden and you keep things in the dark, it will allow you to see things as they are not.
Yes.
And we serve a God who calls those things that aren't as though they were. Mm-hmm. And we serve a God who exposes things. And we serve a God who does a healing work and a redemptive work. And so no matter what you see now, if you will begin to bring light to things, God will do such a freeing work in your relationship, right? Yeah. Had I just simply hit the light, I would have seen this is my wife coming in and not an intruder. And my immediate reaction wouldn't have been to fight, right? And I think that the darkness allows fear in where fear doesn't belong. Mm. There's not, if you have kids, it's like, hey, there's something in your room that could hurt you. Mm-hmm. Look around, look in the closet, look under the bed. There's nothing in here that can hurt you. But all of a sudden you turn the lights off and it casts shadows and you see things that aren't really there. Mm. And so it's like, man, we want to bring light to our relationship. We want to live in a relationship that is open and pure. And, I talked about this in our last podcast. When you look at the example of the temple took work. And God was very adamant about every detail. Mm-hmm. It took preparation and process to get to the intimacy of God. And every detail of the temple is laid out, and the presence of God did not rest in the temple until the very last detail was taken care of. Mm-hmm. God cares about intimacy. Yes. And he cares about your intimacy in your marriage. All of those steps were preparation for intimacy. And if a priest went into the Holy of Holies, this most intimate place with God, the heart of the temple, seeing the presence of God, if they went in there with any hidden motive or any hidden sin, they died on the spot. Because God doesn't take this lightly. Mm. God takes intimacy seriously.
How many times would we have been just on the ground dead in our marriage because we're not willing to be vulnerable and honest?
Yeah, we've got to get rid of the hidden areas in our life. Mm-hmm. And we have to be transparent and honest with one another. Man, it's worth it. It's worth it to share those deep, dark places. It may take some healing. Mm-hmm. It may take some time. It may not be great right away. It may not be perfect right away. We have dear friends who have shared things with each other where it's like, hey, I messed up years and years ago, but I need to confess this right now. I need to bring this to light right now, and we're going to build and we're going to get better. And because of that, we see there being these pillars of strength being forged into marriages because of the admission of sin, or the admission of lack, or the admission of an area of insecurity, right?
We've seen that so many times in people around us. And I think that our flesh wants to scream at us and tell us that we have to have it all together. I mean, especially in today's world where what we're looking at on our phones is highlight reels, and, you know, this idea that everything is perfect and everyone has it all together, when in reality, that's not always what's happening behind the scenes. And so whether we realize it or not, we allow these things to become deep-seated in our heart, and then we feel this pressure that we put on ourselves, this need to have it all together and to be perfect and to check all the boxes. And in reality, we're killing our marriage by doing that. When if we instead would just say, hey, I'm, needing help in this area, that actually is going to bring strength to our marriage. And it's just so typical of the kingdom. It feels upside down, right? It feels, the last shall be first. Like, so many times we see that in the word, and it's like, okay, being vulnerable and not, trying to just impress you and give you my best, doing the opposite of that is actually what's going to improve our marriage. It feels counterintuitive, but in reality, it's exactly what our marriage needs to grow layer upon layer.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, you have to be careful with one another. A marriage is a place of safety. And if you're going to be transparent with one another, you've got to make sure you lay the groundwork of creating a place of peace, creating a place of safety, creating a place where there's no condemnation, creating a place where there is no shame, and where we're not using the past against each other. We're not using our faults against one another. We are here to strengthen one another and to be there for one another and to help one another. Like, I mean, the Word of God talks about Eve being a helper for Adam. And that he wasn't incomplete, he just simply needed help. And we're going to talk about that in our next podcast. But, man, it's so important that you are able to be transparent and live a pure life, right? Pure just means free of darkness, right? Like you talk about purified gold. It's just free of anything that isn't gold. Man, free yourself of anything that doesn't fit. Free yourself of anything that isn't you. And I can remember, I talked about this in one of our other podcasts, that I came to you one time and I just admitted fault and I admitted sin, and it was hurtful to you. And I can remember you saying, baby, this isn't who I married. This isn't who you are. I know who you are. You're a man of God, and we're going to get through this together. And for you to look into me and create that place of safety when I had done something, when I had been so broken and I was so full of shame and like never wanted to be at this place, and you said, hey, I know you're a man of God, we're going to do this together, what can I do to help you in this? And it's like, I didn't know if you were going to stay, and instead of not you didn't just stay, you doubled down. And you said, man, I'm here for you. And that's how we need to be treating one another. We need to be there for one another and say, hey, I'm not going to leave you in a time of hardship. I'm going to double down. This is where when the going gets tough, like, I'm here, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. I'm in for the long run. I have long-term vision, and it takes creating that place of safety to be able to have healthy, pure, transparent conversations.
Yeah, that's so good.
So how do we make our marriage greater today? Like I said before, your secrets make you sick. Stop holding on to it and be honest with one another. Sit down, allow God to do a work in your life. Expose these things to God, expose these things to your spouse. Live open and free. Have hard conversations. Give your spouse the grace to be honest and transparent. That is one of the most important things. If you can take anything from today, man, please allow your spouse to do this to you, just as you would like them to do that for you. You know what I mean? Like, you want to have the space to be able to be open and honest. You want them to give you that same grace. And so extend that before you expect it.
Yeah.
Right? Extend that forgiveness. Make the decision, no matter what they tell me right now, I'm going to forgive them. And I'm going to fight for a marriage.
Yeah.
And then put in the work. It takes work, and it's worth it.
Yeah, it really is. Well, hey, our hope is that today you are one step closer to the marriage that you always dreamed of.
Yes.
Just like Dustyn said, it is worth it. It is so, so worth it. If this blessed you today, will you take a minute to share it with somebody? Maybe subscribe below. You can head over to greatermarriage.com. As always, we have a free gift for you on there. 75 fun and flirty ways to keep the spark alive. Lots of fun tools. We had a ton of fun putting that together.
Lots of ways to be transparent. Ton of
Lots of
questions
ways.
on there. Ways to start conversations and
Yes.
all the things.
Yes, you can get that for free. Again, greatermarriage.com. We love you guys so much. We are praying for you. Go be great.